with the, invention of...
What happened there, mate?
What?
It just went so loud in my ears, mate. It literally made me jump.
Oh, sorry, mate. Is that better?
I don't know what happened.
Is that better?
Yeah, that's fine. But mate, honestly, I physically jumped. You'll have to start that bit again. Sorry,
I can't wait to...
Literally.
Welcome to the virtual towers of Binary Arcadia, where the games go on long into the night. So, hello Barcadians, you are joining Rich and I today, and this is a bit of it's actually a video that has come from a subscriber request, Lulu and Ella. So shout out to Lulu and Ella. On the back of our Fears for the Gaming Industry video. And so yeah, just in response to something of some toxicity in the industry at the moment. We see a lot of YouTubers, we see a lot of videos, and quite rightly on occasions shouting out the industry for doing things that we don't consider best practice, we don't consider good or positive, or growing for the games industry. In fact, you could say it goes in the opposite direction. Well, this video aims really just to celebrate the grassroots of gaming for Rich and I, where it all started, where it came from, how it's affected our lives in really positive ways, and also we'll discuss, generally, some good things about gaming. So yeah, this is very much a puff piece for video gaming, as a bit of an antidote to some of that kind of negative energy. We don't want to shout that down because, opinions, sharing our concerns is a good thing because it helps to regulate, the industry and where gaming is going. So it's just like journalism basically, which helps to, feed back to the world, and the fabric at large to make sure it's, we head in the right direction together. But at the same time, it can be a bit doom and gloom and it can get a bit negative. So this video is all about celebrating, reminding ourselves of why we love this medium so much. So just to set ourselves a little bit of an agenda, first of all, Rich and I have got a few kind of bullet points, if you like, a few topics specifically we want to talk through, just to provide some more, I suppose, more objective facts, if you like, with a bit of research we've done as to why gaming is good for you. And this is, some of it's evidence-based as well. And then we wanted to finish up with a kind of more, I suppose, rounded and a bit vaguer discussion, but drawing on our experiential history with games and how, that's brought new things to our lives. So, I mean, Rich, just to give you a shout in the introduction, is there anything you want to kind of add to that?
No, I think you've covered that all off well and very eloquently.
Thank you very much, sir. So why don't you, Rich, kick us off with the first kind of bullet point heading topic, and we can dive into that.
So the first thing we'd like to talk about is what we're calling escapism. And I've talked about this if you've seen my personal gaming history of something I use gaming for. And I literally use gaming because it's completely different to my real life. I can jump in and I can be a racing car driver, I can ride a dragon, I can fight a sword, I can kill a dragon. And that escapism brings with it, numerous things, be it mental health, of just having that stress relief of doing something that's, completely different to what you would do in normal life. But, it allows you to express yourself in a different way than what you perhaps can do in your real life.
Absolutely. And I think, in a more traditional sense, it's very comparable with diving into a good book, isn't it? You are literally immersing yourself in another almost universe, another world away from your own. So, that your problems, your trials and tribulations kind of fade into the background when that happens. And
exactly.
You're living and breathing a different imaginative world that just gives you reprieve. And not only that, but it can give you a place to kind of vent and decompress, which then when you do return to your life and life is problematic. It's just the way it is. It has ups and downs. That you've got a renewed energy, and you know you're coming from it's like going to bed and waking up in the morning, and you know most of the time you've got that renewed vigor to attack the day ahead of you. So yeah, I think absolutely. For me, like with all things, there can be too much of it, and you know I've had a fair few lengthy sessions on video games. Most of the Zeldas tend to get under my skin and consume my my waking hours. But you know, as long as you do it in moderation and you're balancing your life out, and you know you're not absolutely engulfed in the game world, well, I think it's really healthy, really good.
Definitely.
And just to extend that, Rich, I suppose as well, you know, not just for ourselves, but when you think about other people who are less fortunate, who, you know, may be poor and don't have some of the quality of life that you know people like us do growing up, you know, in the country we're in, you know, in this part of the world, and not just that, perhaps they're, you know, got physical problems. Perhaps they can't, you know, they can't walk, or you know, they can't get out and about like we do. They don't have that freedom that we're blessed with. Well, for people like that, you know, games are a means to express themselves in a way that, well, like you point out, Rich, racing in a car that, you know, you probably never have the opportunity to do, riding a dragon, doing all these kind of really amazing things that we're never likely to experience, but you can kind of live vicariously through that game and really get a taste. And I think there's a great sense of freedom, which is part of why I adore open world games, because you know the more we get, the more that genre develops, and the more freeing the experience, the more we can do in them, and the more they become almost, you know, akin to reality. You know, the greater that sense of immersion, which really just adds to, you know, the experience of immersing yourself in not just a book, but you've got this kind of living, breathing, visual world.
And I think, as we've said, that's, you know, that can be because you're immersing yourself in a character, in lots of the character, story-based games that we like to be, you know, Solid Snake, Nathan Drake, etc. Or you just want to have some, you know, almost mind-numbingly play some football, or do something that's just very singular, very, you know, one-dimensional, that, you know, I just want to play a bit of football rather than having this thing I've got to really think about, you know. So it also comes on lots of different levels. The amount of escapism is as detailed as you want it, really. It's at your beck and call.
I like that, because, you know, it's the same thing. It's like when you put a movie on, sometimes you want like a suspenseful, or maybe you want a political thriller, or maybe you want a period drama. But those kinds of films tend to require a little bit more thought, don't they? Whereas sometimes definitely. You just want a blockbuster, dumb action movie.
Yeah. That you can just forget about, you know. Yeah,
put yourself in neutral, your brain's barely ticking over, and it's just enjoying that, you know, really easy intake of entertainment.
Absolutely.
And yeah, you're absolutely right. Different games have, you know, they're catered to different audiences in that way. So, fantastic. So, anything more to say on escapism, Rich? Or are you okay for me to?
I think it's time to move on.
So the next bullet point, well, I suppose it's kind of transformation, we'll call it, this next bullet point. So what I was getting at here, and we've essentially touched upon it in the last one, but we were talking about, you know, immersing yourself into these virtual worlds, kind of projecting yourself into these characters, like Rich said, Snake, Nathan Drake, Link, all these kind of narrative-driven stories. And what they do is, as we've said, is give you that taste of an adventure, an experience that you might not normally have the opportunity to do so. And also throughout that experience, you're going through kind of a roller coaster of, you know, virtual emotions, if you like. They're artificially created, but it doesn't mean to say they're not real at all. You might feel sadness, you might feel great happiness, you might feel excitement, you might feel adversity and have to overcome that, and then that feeling of satisfaction as you do. or great anger and rage as you can't get past a really difficult part of the game. But when you do surmount that, it's all the more satisfying.
Oh, yeah.
And essentially what I'm getting at here, I've actually been reading a book about Zelda and kind of the psychological effects of Zelda and what they refer to as the hero's journey, which is kind of like an archetypal narrative which has specific kind of plot beats, which is used almost universally in a lot of different medias, films, books, games, not just in Zelda, but it does focus on that specifically in the book. And what it suggests is that, as we project into Link as a character, and the more deeply we immerse and empathize with the character and become one, and a lot to do with that specifically for Zelda is, well, one, for example, he doesn't traditionally in the series have a voice. So that allows you to really feel like you're in his shoes because it doesn't project a voice, which then detaches you from the immersion of the game.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Instead, it really brings you into that role even more. And as you experience Link's journey, well, you're self-actualizing, you're going through your own journey of discovery. And when you disconnect from that game, you complete that game, that experience you've had, that degree of self-actualization, you get to take that with you. That's not left in the game. Your brain has been through that journey. You've had those emotions, you've had those probably conflicts of emotions at times, and you've come full circle with it. So, I can definitely speak from experience on that. I've mentioned on the channel our top 10, and as Rich knows, Shadow of the Colossus, and how that helped me deal with a difficult time of my life when I had, you could say, some demons going on. And it gives you, it gave me a kind of a direction, it gave me a motive, it gave me a purpose, and something to attach to in a way that I was probably struggling to understand in my own mind. I couldn't probably vocalize the conflicts within. And it gave me a way to express that and to almost to work through it as I worked through and completed the game. And I ended up coming out feeling, almost a bit healed. And I don't know about you, Rich, if you've ever had a similar sort of experience, even in, maybe not to that extent, but...
I don't know whether I felt it in that sense. Yeah, I don't know. I really enjoyed Breath of the Wild. I felt, I felt like Breath of the Wild almost re-energized my love of games. And it was quite transformative in that respect because, I don't know, I'd sort of not fell out of love with the games, but I'd sort of got disillusioned with games a little bit. Maybe some games had been overhyped and I felt a bit, because we were in a bit of a dip, I think, a bit of a lull in games as well, and I felt a bit like, well, there's not much out there. And then I played Zelda and it just completely transformed my thinking, and I just thought, I didn't think we'd see like incredible games again, and that was just like an absolute standout moment for me that just made me realise that,
I know what you mean by that.
That
feeling when you get blown away by something. But that's, like you say, that's perfect for this kind of bullet point that we're talking about, because, well, that is still really transformative. It kind of lit a fire in you, and, it led to us creating this channel, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's hugely creative and positive as well, because it's gone on to produce, hopefully, a lot of entertainment for people, a platform to share our love. I think
absolutely. That's like the essence of what good gaming is about, isn't it? It's inspiring, it's transforming, it's changing your opinion about something, it's opening your eyes to the possibilities that there's something better out there that you've not seen, or it's motivating you, it's all these things.
Yeah, absolutely. And you could imagine somebody, we've touched upon mental health a couple of times already, but you can imagine somebody who just feels perhaps in that kind of mire of depression, who feels, things are hopeless, they can't they can't do things, they're perhaps very low self-esteem, and just a few, things in a game, just feeling like you're making progress in some sense, even if it might not be in real life, but you've got a sense of progress elsewhere. It can do a lot to just renew your hope in any one moment. And as we know, life is made of moments, and these kind of positive runs, these things can be hugely contagious. And if only in that kind of really negative cloud and low mood we can always get in, we have that little bit of light at the end of the tunnel, that positive spark. And sometimes that's all we need to kind of get things back on track. To get back to ourselves. So I think that's that one kind of explained as well as I can. Rich, what about you? You happy with that?
Yeah, I think you're fine. And did you want to move on to this next bit that we want to talk about, which is sort of around the same sort of ideas, but it's maybe taking it a step further?
Yeah, so I suppose this next bullet point is again building on the back of what we've said, this transformation, but this is more to do with health, well-being, and empirical evidence that backs up that gaming is good for us. Basically, it's good for brain development. So I don't know, Rich, do you want to shout out a couple of bits from the notes we've got?
So the APA, the American Psychological Association, come out and basically said gaming is good for you. It gives you learning, it gives you health, social skills, which we'll come on to talk more about when we get on to a few more bullet points. It improves spatial navigation, reasoning, memory, and perception. I mean, we've all seen the, is it brain training?
Yeah, Professor Kiwajima or something? I can't remember.
Something like that. But hasn't that been proved that it helps, memory and cognitive stuff? Although it's sort of like tongue in cheek that it's brain training, it's actually been proved that is the case, hasn't it?
I think it does keep your brain and your brain cells. It retains them and almost gives it an elasticity that it can, it can remain. Keep those links within the brain sparking and firing. So yeah, I think it has. I don't know if there's any studies specifically, but let's say it has. Fact.
Like it. Do you want to take over and talk some more bits?
Yeah, apparently, I mean, we've said spatial navigation, but apparently also, not only does it improve your spatial navigation, but it also apparently improves your capacity to think in a 3D space. So, the likes of Super Mario 64, for example, one of the first proper kind of 3D open world games, it gives you that, ability to think outside of yourself in a 3D environment, which, crikey, there's all sorts of applications for that. Just driving alone, Rich, I think you'd say.
Yeah, definitely.
Is going to be the main one there. There's also a study, the senior scientist at the Center for Lifespan Psychology at the Max Planck Institute for Human Development, whose name is, hopefully I don't mispronounce this, Simone Kuhn. So he did a study on Super Mario 64 again, and the results suggested there was actually a volumetric increase in the mass of the brain. Wow. So basically, playing Super Mario 64 literally increases the size of your brain.
Play it now.
Yeah, if that's not an advert for video games, I don't know what is.
Yeah.
Scientists saw increases in 3 major areas of the brain: the prefrontal cortex, the right hippocampus, and the cerebellum, which again, hopefully I'm pronouncing correctly. So yeah, and just to finish off another few bits, I mean, it all kind of plays into what we've mentioned, but it improves hand-eye coordination, problem solving.
I mean, that's a problem solving and strategizing is a big one, isn't it? I mean, that's basically what gaming is
Especially
about.
For you, sir. Especially for you.
But isn't it? That's what we're doing when we're playing games. We're problem solving, be it how can I score a goal? How can I beat my lap time? How can I beat the computer opponent? How do I get past this obstacle? How do I get past this boss? All we're ever doing is problem solving on games. That's what we're doing.
How do I beat the GDI? How do I beat the Nod army?
Yes, that's what I do all of the time.
That's just a nod for you as to Rich's love and recent rediscovery of Command and Conquer, which we might see a retrospective on, Rich. Who knows?
Yes. I'm currently playing through 17 titles.
Oh, wow. So yeah, I mean, you look at, again, we'll go back to Zelda Breath of the Wild, Rich inspiration for the channel. Shrines, what were they all about? That was literally just, here's a problem, solve it.
Yeah, use these things to solve this problem. The world's your oyster. These are the rules. How can you do it? I mean, that's a brilliant thing. And especially, I relate that to, by trade, I'm an engineer and my job is all about problem solving, That's what I do day in, day out. So stuff like that just appeals to me massively. I guess maybe that's one of the things that that got me into gaming maybe, is that problem solving. That's what I liked about gaming.
I think, if you literally try to distill the kind of the biggest things I love about video games, you could probably just say those two things: a good narrative and problem solving. Mix those two together in some way, shape or form, and I'm hooked. Yeah. So that's definitely for me. And then we've already talked about, but anti-aging, you've mentioned there with brain training, Rich. So I mean, it's just, the journals, the studies are out there which tell us that video gaming is really positive developmentally. I mean, I'm sure there's other sides to gaming. If you get addicted to games in the wrong way, it's got a downward side as well. So all of this, like everything else in life, in moderation. But but certainly there is such a developmental upside to playing video games.
Absolutely. And
so Rich,
and to move on from that, the other big thing about gaming, and especially in the day and age we live in currently, where we can connect instantly to billions of people around the world, is community. I think our friendship was created around both of our love of gaming. We both loved gaming, and that's what we found common ground on when we became friends at high school, and that's what we developed our friendship around, and that's how we got to know each other.
It was the basis for our friendship, and thankfully, it was the spark which made us found, a load of other things in common.
Of course.
We had a kind of a humour that, we really found each other fun and to be around. And then, over time, like all friendships and relationships do that, it deepens even more, and you make those real connections with people. But absolutely, gaming was that kind of quick and easy basis. I think not just between us, Rich, but for many friendships we had with people as we grew up.
Yeah, lots of people. I mean, that's the one thing that I would say about gaming. It is extremely unifying, and I've touched on it on another video that I've done for the channel, but it brings people together. We've had weekends where, the boys have got together and we've literally spent the weekend playing Resident Evil, and it's just brought us closer together as mates. It's fun, it's engaging, it's something to laugh about, it's something to, just have fun with, and it's brilliant.
Yeah, and exactly, and that really probably contradicts with some of the more, conventional, stereotypical views of gamers as these kind of solitary folk in their bedroom, ensconced from society, with a bag of What's-Its or Cheetos, just going to town and
one of our friends.
And losing all their social skills, because no, it doesn't have to be like that. It can be,
not at all.
You can share that immersive experience, and it can be so much more because of that. I would say, to that reference to that weekend, Rich, Resident Evil, that I don't think I would have enjoyed that game as much as I did had it not been for that experience we had together. We shared in all that suspense that we laughed at times.
Scares, it's everything, isn't it?
And you only have to look at, the Wii to see how that kind of really transformed, multiplayer experiences, and in fact it brought it into so many more people's homes, even into like old people's homes. The kind of physicality of using a remote and literally interacting in game worlds in a much more intuitive way. It really led the way for people who weren't gamers before to experience games, in a much more natural way and a much more accessible way. And all that is about sharing experiences. So
absolutely. And then that leads on to, there's nowadays you've got games conventions that you can go to and meet people who are like-minded. So that's bringing people together of the same thing. This whole thought of the community of gamers all like collectively together. But also nowadays, the biggest games in the world are these mass multiplayer online games where
I was going to say,
go on.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. They're where we've seen these humongous digital communities kind of break through. One of the first was Rich, maybe World of Warcraft? That's one of the earliest.
Probably, yeah. But I mean, lots of those MMO games are competitive, so you're against people. But then some of these, they're team-based, so you play with your teammates. Or I think can you play Minecraft online nowadays, Tabs, and collectively create things online with each other?
I'll have to ask nephew Joe on that one. But yeah, I mean, I'm sure you can. I'm sure there's ways to do it. And even for us back in the day, Phantasy Star Online, that was our big kind of MMO experience, wasn't it? I think our first one. And we branched out to kids at our school, and we forged these little friendships and connections.
We did
through that game, and it's wonderful to see. You hear about all the kind of news articles, World of Warcraft back in the day, and I think even up to modern games like Destiny 2. People literally find their loves via these massively multiplayer online games. And that's a really good thing. It's a positive thing.
I think as well, it's because you're playing a game with someone who is also playing the same game, you instantly share something in common. You both like the game you're playing. So there isn't this it's almost boundaries are broken because of that. You're literally logging on to a group of people that are all into the same thing as you. So you instantly have something in common with all these people playing the game.
Yeah,
so
I mean, me and you, Rich, and our group of friends, we love hiking, don't we? And you get that sense when you go hiking up a mountain and you're surrounded by all these kind of like-minded folk who, because we all share that common hobby, that interest of we like to hike.
Yeah.
And it's a similar sort of analogy to playing a video game online, one that you've really, fallen in love with. And yeah, as you say, Rich, it just breaks down those barriers. And before you know it, really, you're forging a kind of a friendship, which, hopefully will blossom if you want it.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, we've got a stat down here, but we've just referenced that back in the day, video gaming perhaps had these stigmas. It was this kind of subculture of, it's for geeks, it's for nerds.
Yeah.
But nowadays, I think, what's the stat, I've got here? 1.2 billion gamers worldwide. There's 1.2 billion gamers. I mean, that's colossal.
Which is what is that? I mean, are we up to 7 billion population or 7? So that's 1 in 7 people are gamers.
Which just means it's so much more mainstream, isn't it, than it ever was before. And
absolutely.
And you see that, don't you? I mean, with the likes of esports and it's and YouTube and all these social platforms. It is a massive industry, but also, more importantly, I think for us, Rich, it's a massive community of people. So yeah, I think we've said probably all we can on that one.
Definitely.
So the last one, a little bit of a tenuous one, won't take too much to cover this ground.
It's funny because in the notes I've wrote a stretch.
Have you really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think this hasn't come quite into fruition yet, and maybe we'll see it in the future with the, expansion of VR.
Absolutely.
but it's, the fact that you can, in certain video games, there's an element of physical exercise.
Yeah.
So PE. So Rich, what do you think? Go on, tell me why this is a stretch.
Because I like gaming because I can literally sit on my sofa and do it. I'm active at work, I work out, I walk my dogs. I'm quite an active person, so I like gaming because I can literally sit down and just have that little escapism of rest playing a game. But there are games where you can be physical with them. The Wii was an advocate of this. It was all about getting more physical, playing tennis or whatever, and I think that, along with the VR, and I think dance mat games is another example where, games can be physical. They can be used as physical exercise. My good lady uses an app on the Wii where you basically can do workouts. There's like some exercise, there's a Wii Fitboard, I think, that goes with it. And
I remember that. You
can literally do exercise on it. That's how she does her working out, or certainly used to. She's not so much nowadays, but so there's definitely a physical side to it, which again, as I've demonstrated, it's take it or leave it. But some people, they get a physical exercise out of gaming, and that's a positive from that side of things.
Yeah, I think this is a part of, or a genre of games that probably hasn't quite taken off as much as it probably could. Because as you say, I think the traditional experience is, it is a place that you can chill out and play a video game. You get to have these wonderful experiences, but without all the effort and exertion required to to do them. But we saw, with the Wii Fit, and all of those kind of physical games, that it did open up a new way of playing video games, thanks to Nintendo's creativity and innovation. Yeah, absolutely. And it stuck. There was a lot of households out there that were playing Wii Sports, golf, bowling, burning those few extra calories that they might not normally. It was getting people in old people's homes a bit more active, a thing to gather around and have some fun with. And I think that remains perhaps untapped. But I suppose that the message is it doesn't preclude, physical experiences, which are obviously really good. We've talked a lot about brain development, but, for keeping fit. So yeah, I mean, I'd love to see this, get better and better as we progress into the future. And I'm sure VR will probably be the way we achieve that.
Definitely.
And I know, was there not a patent recently, or not a patent? I think, was it Miyamoto said something in maybe one of his presses or one of the shareholders meetings about how Nintendo are focusing on new ways to play video games, and they want to focus on almost reinventing the controller, if you like, the traditional way, which, Nintendo that's their bag. They're always trying to. Yeah, and they push the industry along with that. They take those risks. So yeah, exciting things to come on that front, I hope. So kind of just to wrap up, that's the kind of the research, the bullet points we did. I'll try and share the links to some of those medical studies that we mentioned.
Good stuff.
Just so you can explore them in your own time. But to wrap up, I wanted to kind of tap in more directly, if you like, to mine and Rich's, as I mentioned, experiential history with games, to talk more personally about what games have brought to us. So I don't know, Rich, do you want to kick us off? Tell us a bit about, if you've not already, go and check out our personal history videos, because that'll give you a good insight. But Rich, do you want to tell us?
So yeah, if people have watched that will know that my sort of foot in the door to gaming was PC orientated on real-time strategy games. Specifically, Command and Conquer was my foot in the door, and it was through playing Command and Conquer and the subsequent titles that got me interested in, as well as through my dad, who helped tremendously, to building computers and being interested in the bones of computers and, how they were made, what parts were in there, and understanding more about them. And I guess ultimately that's, in some way, led me to a career in engineering. So that sort of, sparked that interest in me in working out how things are made and how things work, and that kind of thing. So I mean, it's a tenuous link maybe, but I sort of look back at that and think, did gaming inspire my love of engineering in some way?
Yeah, and I think that there's something there with that. I mean, obviously, your dad was a very practical person, wasn't he? Well, he is a very practical man, and I think that obviously informed you for the most part, and your own interests, your own curiosities. But I think gaming, you could definitely say, help drive that on. It certainly didn't detract from it. It almost had its own, rabbit holes you could go down, which, hopefully inspired it, really kind of.
But,
go on.
But on that as well, when I think back about games that I played, Roller Coaster Tycoon, Theme Hospital, Command and Conquers, they're all like building based games. You're always building something. They're creative. You've got to create things. And I look back and I wonder, is that part of what, all part and parcel of my development of my engineering,
Yeah,
so
they've got structures, they've got resource management, but they've got that creative vibe that you can really make it your own base or your own hospital, your own roller coaster. But yeah, at the same time, they give you that outlet, don't they? And I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, we're made up of millions of things, of choices, decisions, influences. Some of them are entirely subconscious, and it's hard to tell why we arrive at certain things like we do. But I think it's fair to say that has probably had a factor, hasn't it, in your life and career. So yeah, I mean, just from my point of view, I suppose I can point out, specific games which have kind of, Monkey Island, for example, a real big game of my youth, and it's renowned for its humour, that game, its scripting and how funny it is. And I think that, even things like that led to develop my own sense of humour, be it good or bad. So yeah, and even if I point to games, I've already talked about Shadow of the Colossus and how big an effect that had on me, but even games like GTA, that was one of the first games where I really got a sense that it was like a social commentary on real life, kind of a tongue-in-cheek send-up to, some of the cultures we see in the world. Parody, but, it was funny. But not just being funny, it actually makes you think differently and perhaps a bit more critically about culture, about society, in a way that I don't really think I'd thought too much about before. It lit that fire within me, and it bore new perspectives for me on the world, if you like, broadened my horizons. So I think, that's, if I could point out a million other games that have had different effects in that way, but you get a sense of what I'm saying there. And I suppose before I finish off, actually, I also wanted to mention that games magazines were massive for me. Before the days of the internet and YouTube and these ways to get the wealth of information from the world around us. Magazines were the way I absorbed and got excited for upcoming games. But what they also did for me was they really helped me with my English, grammar. They also, because of that, got me into books, into reading English literature, which I ended up doing quite well in, GCSE level, things like that, all thanks to games, I would say. But they also opened my eyes to the games industry at large. So, journalism, thinking more critically about games. This is kind of, you could say, a culmination of that, having our own YouTube channel. It'd be great one day to be able to do something like this or something in the game industry as a full-time job and as a career. But yeah, it really did inspire me, and even gave me a taste of you could even say the economy, the economics, because the games industry these days is a huge part of that. And it opens up all these boxes, and it's like I think life in many ways, you could say, is like a big dot-to-dot picture. And it's about connecting dots, it's about finding patterns, it's about making connections. And that's the way we educate ourselves, we broaden our horizons, we master the world around us, if you like, much like, Breath of the Wild, for example. And I think it's a really good fabric as a medium for helping us to, to explore the world around us, both inside games and outside of games, if you see what I mean.
Definitely.
So, yeah, I think, does that make sense, Rich? Am I just spouting nonsense?
No, it's good, mate. I love it. I love it. It's brilliant.
So, yeah, I think that pretty much wraps up everything I wanted to say, but what about you, Rich?
Definitely, and I think as almost a closing statement from me is there's so much negativity at the moment with things in the gaming industry, in the news. Games seem to make the news every day. I'm seeing games being accused of being the reasons for people doing horrible crimes. And I think
scapegoated.
It's terrible. It's exactly that. It's scapegoating. And I think games should be celebrated more for what they are. They're brilliant, creative freedom, and they're just special pieces of entertainment that you get to experience while it's happening, not somebody else is making it happen, and they should be celebrated more than they currently are. And I feel almost sad with how derogatory we're looking at games nowadays, and how they're almost they're being portrayed as the axis of evil, and it's just so far removed from that for 99% of the people playing them. And I just think it's so wrong, and a miscarriage of justice, absolutely.
Yeah, I agree, mate. I've said it many times before, and I'm sure we're going to do some more videos on it in the future, but I really do see games as an art form, as a modern art form, a way to express ourselves, express, some of the problems of existence, because being human ain't easy. And, I just think, there's types of games which you could say, we might want to curb, or we might want to look at in terms of the influence that they can carry over. But that can be applied to any sort of medium, like, films, books,
Exactly.
It's all about the way we regulate it. But that doesn't mean to say that we can just box off video gaming as a negative and destructive thing which cultures, bad people, because for every bad story out there, I'm sure there's, a million more really positive ones. And if it wasn't for games, I don't think I'd enjoy my life as much. I really don't.
No. And also, when people are saying these just horribly negative things, how does that reflect on the people making the games? That's what they're doing for a living. So it's almost like they're suggesting that these horrible things that are happening in the world are their fault. They made that game. They made those choices to create that game like they did. And I think that's terrible.
Well, these
people are artists creating their medium is gaming. They're creating it from nothing.
And we've talked about how life is about connecting dots, making connections, and all of the kind of spurious, tenuous things that lead to our decision makings, to our influences. And that's just the thing. It's very difficult to kind of get to the root of somebody who does something terrible. But it's a quick and easy way to just label something, isn't it? To point the finger at one nice, easy, simple thing, which perhaps one or two people don't like, just because they've never, seen the positive side of them. And
Absolutely.
it really does give them a bad name. And, hopefully this video will be going some way to correcting that, as you say, Rich, injustice.
Definitely.
So yeah, what are you looking forward to, Rich, about video games? Do you want to kind of just end on that? Anything for the future where you want to see
looking forward to?
See it move?
I'm looking forward to Death Stranding and how that's going to connect people more than they already are.
Ooh, good one.
How we can share that with each other, because I think,
Kojima promises, he's got some big promises with that one, hasn't he?
With all of the gaming available on the internet and how it can be amazingly community driven, sometimes that type of game can feel very isolating. A single narrative, single player game. But actually, it seems like he's taken a game and created a new genre almost. So I'm really excited to see how that will go and whether that's successful in the way he says it is. And obviously in the future, I'm looking forward to, next gen consoles and the further movement into VR and how that will go. And yeah, there's so many things to be excited about moving forward.
Yeah, me too. I mean, on a more basic level, I'm just really looking forward to the next generation, that kind of graphical leap that we all hope for, that greater sense of immersion you tend to get from games as they develop.
Definitely.
We've seen RTX, ray tracing, and the kind of the way that kind of really makes games even better and really kind of brings them that much closer to real life. And I think that's really exciting. And as you say, VR, it's all of the big boys of Microsoft, Sony, even Nintendo have had a little go with the Switch, and Labo to an extent has some kind of VR connections. Yeah. So I am really excited. I mean, we tried it ourselves recently, Rich, and we've got mixed feelings on it, but I'm sure there's ways to overcome some of those issues.
Well, I think that our shortcomings on it are because it's not a level that we think is good enough to be called virtual reality, if that makes sense. I think because of this talk now about the new VR headset for the PlayStation, which will come with the PlayStation 5 or a year after the PlayStation 5, I think potentially when we see that could be a big leap forward for VR. So
I mean, this is a bit of a harebrained idea just to kind of end my thoughts on, but I'd love to see one day, you get kind of the modding community and you get these kind of open source projects, or cloud computing. Maybe not streaming platforms, Rich, but cloud computing for me has a lot of potential for, perhaps, people creating their own virtual spaces into this huge interconnected virtual world. Not in obviously to an intrusive way. I'm thinking that we can make these kind of very personal experiences that we can share with each other online, almost a bit like, Mario Maker or something. But I think as we go forward, I really want games to, really play up that they're these creative tools that allow people to really express themselves and pour their passion into, a project they can then share and get out there in the wilds. And therefore, create, these sort of rags to riches stories that you see in the likes of indie developers. I love that they're a medium for creativity. So that's my hope.
Definitely.
So should we end it there, Rich? Are we done?
Yeah, I reckon so. Hopefully everyone can see that we love the gaming industry and we think it's a real positive force.
Absolutely. It's a beautiful thing. So thank you very much, everybody, for watching. Please, if you did enjoy the video, give us a like. Really helps to support and grow the channel. If you didn't know, give us a dislike because feedback is always welcome. If you want to see more from Rich and I, do not forget to subscribe. We're on our way to the next milestone for the channel and hopefully give away at 250 subscribers. And ring that bell for notifications to stay abreast of everything we put out there. And I think that's probably about it. Another one for the archives.
Stamped and completed.